Meteorologist Alana Brophy is here with a look at the forecast. Alana?
Hi, Rick. Yeah, really hot out there today as those temperatures climb well above average. We take that live look at Salt Lake City where you see hazy sunshine and not so much in the way of cloud cover. That often will impact our UV index, which gives you an idea of how strong the sun's UV rays are. We're sitting in that orange category. That's a 6 to a 7. That's still high risk when it comes to the sun's rays, even this late in the day. The red that you notice there in Elko and Ely and towards Cedar City in southern Utah is an 8 to 10. That means that you could be dealing with sunburn in a very short amount of time, so the UV index really playing a big role in today. As we look at our current air quality, you saw that hazy sunshine, and that has to do with ozone, where we're sitting in the unhealthy for sensitive groups in Salt Lake and Weber County. We're unhealthy in Davis County. Now those ozone levels go up. That's a chemical reaction, and we know the heat of the day always makes that worse. It's green. Green means clean down there in southern Utah, which is nice to see. Temperatures in the 90s along the Wasatch Front, 96 in Salt Lake. We've got several triple digits in places like Green River, Moab, over there near Hanksville, 103 in St. George at this hour. Here's a look at how those temperatures will shape up into tonight. Those 90s will start to cool off just a little bit as we get to 9 o'clock. We'll see those upper 80s, but clear skies on deck. We're also dealing with increasing winds in the southwest desert. We've got a fire weather watch out there this evening. The winds will increase and fire danger is going up. A red flag warning going into effect. Who it will impact coming up in my full forecast. Guys, back to you.
Okay, Lana, thanks so much. Let's talk more about those weather conditions sparking concerns over more fires like the recent Traverse Mountain fire that of course burned about 500 acres, coming very close to several homes there in Lehi. Fire officials say the fire is a good reminder to all of us to have defensible space on your property no matter where you live in the state. Defensible space means keeping a buffer around your home because embers are often the biggest danger.
It's not a flaming front moving in, and those embers can blow up to a mile away from the fire. So it's important to think about where could an ember land on my property that might ignite a wildfire.
So it's pretty simple. Look at your property, look at your home, and make sure you have something around it, the defensible space, just in case you face a fire.
Firework bans and restrictions did not stop people all across the country from lighting them off this past weekend. This was the scene from the Los Angeles area after all local fireworks shows were canceled there. Looks kind of like what we saw in the Salt Lake and Utah valleys on Saturday night. As you can see, people took matters into their own hands, and here in Utah, lighting off fireworks is now banned through July 22nd. Utah fire agencies responded to 68 wildfire starts over the holiday weekend. 18 of them started by fireworks. Of Utah's 644 wildfires so far this year, 520 of them have been caused by people. This as the Eagle Fire is still burning in Utah County. A spark from heavy machinery started that blaze on Saturday. Utah Fire Info reports the fire is now 105 acres and is 90% contained. Still ahead, Americans are waiting to see if the Senate will pass a bill to distribute another round of stimulus checks. What round 2 could look like in your mailbox or bank account.
Plus, hand sanitizer can help stop the spread of germs, but the FDA now warning people, read the label very carefully. We'll explain the possible health risk ahead.
And there's that live look outside. You see our colonial flag whipping in the wind. Light winds in the north, but a different story down south. We're tracking fire danger in Utah's most accurate forecast.
Time now for Utah's most accurate forecast with Alana Brophy, Weather Rate certified 9 years in a row.
Happy Monday. I hope you had a great holiday weekend. You're back, you're ready to go, and you feel the heat out there. If you're looking to beat it, Brighton's a great place to go. Up there in the high country with clear skies and some cooler temperatures, the parking lot has a few hikers probably getting out there and enjoying some of the cooler temps. St. George bringing in the heat. Those triple digits are going to stick around for the next little while, and we're going to see increasing winds in that area even into the last few hours. The last hour we've had decent wind gusts in the southwest desert and color country where we see 22 miles per hour there in Delta, low 30s for Milford and Cedar City, 24 mile per hour gust in Moab, and you can tell the difference between southern and northern Utah for today, and we're going to increase those winds heading into tomorrow. We've got extremely dry conditions. Sometimes you feel like a broken record talking about it, but you look at these numbers, which is expressed in percent. This is relative humidity, and whenever you see single digits, it just means our fire fuels are ready to burn. Very, very dry conditions, and it's hot out there. We've got high 90s along the Wasatch Front, triple digits in Green River, Hanksville, 103 in St. George at this hour, so we know that the heat is on. We've got a red flag warning going into effect at 9 a.m. tomorrow for color country for south central and eastern Utah. As you can see, the area is illuminated on this map. This will likely be extended. That red flag warning means we've got critical fire danger out there. This is the criteria when we're talking red flag. You've got to have those high fire fuels that are very dry, the hot temperatures, windy conditions. We know that any fire start would be potentially dangerous. Our visible satellite shows some cloud cover there on the eastern side of the state and some clouds moving through Castle Country. The rest of the state dealing with clear skies. Changes as we head into tomorrow in the way of wind, and that's really for central and southern Utah. You're going to notice as we get through tonight, those clouds hold on over the basin and down through Castle Country. They'll eventually start to clear, and we get a weak, dry, cold front, here it is, that wants to pass through tomorrow. Not bringing any moisture, but it will trigger those winds. These red lines indicating the southerly winds, and one of the reasons that red flag warning is in place. This front is weak and won't have a tremendous result on temperatures. We're still looking at temperatures in the high 80s, low 90s. The stationary front by Wednesday hangs out, but we really just see dry conditions as a ridge of high pressure starts to build and really takes hold. Temperatures in the 80s and 90s for tomorrow, 92 in Salt Lake. Overnight lows, 50s, 60s, or 70s, depending on where you are. Find those cities and find your city. Mountain Valleys in the low 80s tomorrow, 90 in Tooele, 94 in Duchesne. So eastern Utah heating things up. We'll see those triple digits return to Green River. Central Utah will have plenty of heat, but windy conditions and plenty of triple digits down south, including in places like St. George, in and around Washington County and over near Lake Powell. 105 by Friday. The heat is on. Whew, that ridge of high pressure means business by Sunday. Dangerous heat at 108 and 109 down there in southern Utah. The north will flirt with the upper 90s. Yeah, we're going to get close to the century mark on Saturday, but we've just got above average heat and plenty of sunshine, quiet conditions, and the breeze holds on for the next couple of days. Remember, if you're heading out, you can take Utah's most accurate forecast with you. Just head to your smartphone and look for the ABC4 Utah app. We'll be every place you need to go.
You're watching ABC4 News.
Welcome back. Even in the middle of the pandemic, the Utah Film Center is finding ways to make great films available to you and me. Mariah Mellis is joining us here in the studio to tell us about one of the most unique and one of the most uniquely named film festivals in the entire world. Mariah, what's coming up?
Well, thank you, Rick. Yes, very uniquely named. It's called the Damn These Heels Film Festival. It's an LGBT film festival. We've been running for 17 years. This year has proposed a few problems. COVID was not kind to the film industry and not kind to gathering in public. But we've found a way to still make it happen. We're using a really cool website called Eventive. It actually tags through our own website, utahfilmcenter.org/damntheseheels, or you can go to damntheseheels.org to see all of the film selections. We have 18 feature films from 11 different countries, 3 short film programs. And we're finding ways to still get community together, whether we're watching films and doing Q&As afterward, bringing filmmakers to Skype into our conversations, asking community to get together in chat rooms, to Facebook and Instagram, how their viewing experience has changed due to COVID. And we've got a really cool drive-in because you can socially distance in a drive-in. So we'll be hosting a drive-in July 11th at the Utah State Fair Park. We're going to show the 1968 Cannes Film Festival film, The Queen, about the 1967 drag queen competition. So it's really exciting. Great programming coming up.
Very cool. It sounds like you'll be able to replicate the theater experience just virtually online. And tell us about some of the other standout films you've got coming up besides The Queen.
Well, so in addition to a lot of documentary films, we have some great narrative films too. We have The Surrogate, which talks about what it's like to be a gay couple trying to adopt or have a surrogate. We also have 2 locally made films. They are documentaries. They're beautifully done. One is Same Sex Attracted, which focuses on what it's like to be gay attending BYU. I think a lot of us have wondered that and are in support of that institution and of those attending it. So it's a loving but very in-depth look at what it's like to be gay at BYU. We also have a film called Dog Valley, which focuses on the 1988 brutal murder of Gordon Church. He was a USU student, or USUU student, sorry. SUU, Southern Utah University student. And it's a very sad but an important film to see, and just also to celebrate how far we've come.
Very important content there. We saw the dates of the festival, July 10th through the 19th. It starts this Friday. Tell us how we get tickets and how we access the online content.
Great question. So you can purchase the tickets at damntheseheels.org. There are all access passes, which are $75 for a household, so everyone in the house can stream these films. There's a lot of non-film content on here also. We're going to have a drag queen story hour. We're also going to have a panel discussion with Maggie Reese and, Kristen Reese and Maggie Snyder about how the COVID pandemic can mirror that of the AIDS epidemic. So a lot of great non-film content too that is free. So if you go to the website and purchase your tickets to see the films, check out the listing for all the non-film content. Little plug for Drag Queen Story Hour. A local author named Nathan Plummer wrote a book called Even Boys Like Unicorns. And he's going to be giving away a couple of copies of that film, and I can't wait to hear Miss Gay, former Utah, Gia Bianche Stevens will be doing a reading for us.
All right,
so
Damn These
tune
Heels.
in for all of that.
It all gets started on Friday, and you can go to your website to check it all out. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Well, coming up, as we all lather on the hand sanitizer, a warning about its possible health risks from the FDA. Still ahead.
You're watching ABC4 News.
Welcome back. Cases continue to surge in northern Utah tonight. The majority of those infected have been Latino or Hispanic and employees at the meat packaging plant JBS in Hiram. We spoke to Lizette Villages of Smithfield. She spearheaded peaceful protests at JBS. She says the reason Latinos have been hit the hardest is because they do not have the luxury to work from home.
We don't have the opportunity to be able to build a house through Zoom, kill a cow through Zoom, or pick raspberries and tomatoes and potatoes through Zoom. We have to go out and work.
Now Liz is asking for diaper, food, and monetary donations to help continue to assist the Latinos affected by the pandemic, especially in Cache County. To learn more about her efforts and how you can participate, please go to our website, abc4.com. Now to southern Utah, where 96 inmates and 9 staff have tested positive for COVID-19 at the Purgatory Correctional Facility. That means more than 30% of current inmates have contracted the virus. The Washington County Sheriff's Office says the vast majority are asymptomatic, but 4 positive inmates are high risk. Jail staff have only 2 housing units left to test, and they started their first round of retesting this week.
Well, many of us are using more hand sanitizer since the start of this pandemic, but now a warning from the Food and Drug Administration suggests some sanitizer products could be hazardous to your health. ABC4's medical correspondent Saray Chin has more.
If you're using hand sanitizer to help slow the spread of COVID-19, you'll want to check the label. The FDA says it's seeing an increase in hand sanitizer products contaminated with potentially poisonous methanol, which can be life-threatening if ingested and toxic if absorbed through the skin. The agency says states have also reported cases of blindness, hospitalizations, and deaths in adults and children after drinking hand sanitizer products tainted with methanol. When using hand sanitizer, the FDA says to make sure the product contains ethanol, which is safe for topical use, not methanol. The FDA says some of the tainted products could still be in stores, although one brand has been recalled after the agency sent out a warning last month. The FDA says young children who accidentally drink hand sanitizer and adults who ingest it as a substitute for alcohol are the most at risk of poisoning and should seek immediate medical attention. Methanol, or wood alcohol, is used in antifreeze and in fuel production. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says methanol exposure can cause nausea, headaches, dizziness, agitation, amnesia, coma, and seizures. Saray Chin, ABC4 News.
Coming up, talks are heating up in Washington, D.C. about a second stimulus check. How much each American could receive next at 4:30. Thanks for staying with us on this Monday. We start this half hour with breaking election news.
The Associated Press has just called the Republican race for Utah's governor in favor of Spencer Cox, beating out former Governor Jon Huntsman Jr. There's a look at the latest numbers with votes being tallied today. Again, this is the Associated Press calling the race for the primary for Republican governor. We're going to be calling that for Spencer Cox. That is the Associated Press. We'll, of course, have more on this throughout the day right here on ABC4. Now to another pandemic aid bill, which has passed U.S. House that could bring a second round of stimulus checks to Americans. How much can Americans receive from this round of checks? When or if it happens? ABC4's Nick McGurk is looking into that for us tonight. He's joining us live from Utah's Capitol Hill. Nick?
Well, U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell today saying it could really depend on how much you make. But back in March, let's just start from the beginning, the CARES Act put $1,200 in the pockets of most Americans. The question is, what is going to happen next? The House has already passed their own version of a bill. It's the HEROES Act. But again, today, U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell speaking at an event in Kentucky saying when the Senate takes this up in a couple of weeks, it may very well depend on how much money you make, and the folks who are making less than 40 grand a year have been hit hardest. So we're getting clues as to what this might look like. But let's just start from the beginning and tell you everything we know about the possibility of a check coming in the mail for you. The Democrat-controlled House passed the HEROES Act last month, which would authorize another round of stimulus checks for most Americans. Now, the Republican-controlled Senate won't be back in session for 2 weeks, but we're already hearing from the president and members of his administration that they do favor another round of stimulus checks and that they're working on their own plan. The HEROES Act, by the way, is broader than the CARES Act was. Remember, the CARES Act was back in March. The HEROES Act would provide $1,200 per person. That includes children as well. But exact numbers at this point are very much up in the air, according to University of Utah professor Tim Chambliss.
The devil is in the details. You know, we don't know. We have an idea about what the House has said. We're not sure what the Senate is going to do. And remember, if the bills are different, they've got to be reconciled before they can go to the president's desk. Almost for certain, the president, who's self-identified as a fiscal conservative, is going to sign this record deficit spending bill because he wants his name on those checks going out to American voters who are also people worried about their jobs. If they've lost their jobs or they're about to lose their jobs, they need this financial stimulus. They want this, and this would continue on pretty close to the November election.
A lot of theories out there about what could happen, but I have seen online folks could be getting checks as early as August. It might be late August. Chambliss says he thinks that lawmakers are really going to want to push this through sooner rather than later, and he's pointing to the fact that there are 35 Senate seats up for grabs, of course, the presidential election, and then all of the U.S. House of Representatives, all the seats in Congress on the House side are up for re-election as well. His theory is that these lawmakers are going to want to get this done early and not be stuck in Washington. Of course, those lawmakers want to get back into their local communities and campaign and not be seen in Washington not getting anything done. So, when will these checks be sent in the mail, if at all? It's anybody's guess, but that is all we know at this hour. We're live at the Capitol. I'm Nick McGurk, ABC4 News.
Thank you, Nick. As the number of COVID-19 cases skyrockets around the U.S., the federal government is launching what it's calling a testing blitz in some hotspots. Starting today in Florida, Texas, and Louisiana, the hotspot testing blitz, the goal is to test as many people as possible in those sites. Washington correspondent Trevor Shirley reports HHS officials hope to identify asymptomatic carriers, especially in people under 35.
Federal officials hope casting a wide net will catch a lot of unknown COVID-19 cases.
Can we go in and test perhaps a month's worth of testing in only a few days, identify a lot of these asymptomatic individuals, and get them appropriately isolated?
Admiral Brett Giroir of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services said the testing surge will target Florida, Texas, and Louisiana.
We're going to do this surge testing over a period of 5 to 10 days in a locality test a lot of people.
However, HHS declined to say what cities in those 3 states will get surge testing, but plans to release more information Tuesday.
Just think of brush fires. You want to extinguish those brush fires before they become big forest fires.
Texas and Florida both reported record numbers of new infections this week, and now health officials say it's mostly young people under 35 years old who are catching and spreading this disease.
What I see on the news and what I hear is that a lot of young people aren't taking this seriously.
There's also added concern after the 4th of July weekend. Giroir says anybody who was in a crowd should get tested this week and then isolate themselves
until you're absolutely sure you're not developing symptoms and you have a negative test.
He also said the need for so much more testing wouldn't be as great if people wear masks, wash their hands, and stay at least 6 feet apart. Reporting in Washington, I'm Trevor Shirley.
Today, the FDA approved emergency use authorization for a fast on-site coronavirus antigen test. The diagnostic swab test can yield results in about 15 minutes, according to the manufacturer. The test analyzes samples with a device a little larger than a cell phone. It's not designed for home use. Officials see the test as a potentially valuable screening tool to quickly test large amounts of people who may have already had the virus. However, in April, the World Health Organization did warn that the tests are not consistently accurate.
Now to another kind of testing. Utah Congressman Ben McAdams says he is standing with Utah's downwinders to oppose nuclear testing. At a news conference in West Valley City, Representative McAdams touted his efforts to expand the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act and to stop a plan by the Trump administration for new explosive nuclear weapons testing. Fallout from atomic testing that began in the 1950s resulted in ongoing health problems in downwinders to this day.
When that fallout spread across the United States, no one told us we were at risk. There were no masks that would have protected us. Nothing would have protected us.
No one in Salt Lake, Utah, Davis, or Weber counties, or anyone in Idaho, Wyoming, or Montana back then is eligible to receive compensation for fallout-related cancers.
McAdams is a co-sponsor of the Radiation Exposure Compensation Act amendments led by New Mexico Congressman Ben Ray Lujan. The bill would extend RECA eligibility to all Utah counties as well as 11 other states. It also extends the Radiation Exposure Trust Fund, which is set to expire in 2022.
Yeah.
Well, we've gone from fireworks over the weekend to concern about fires now with the weather this week. Alana Brophy back with a look at the forecast. Alana?
Hi, Rick. Yeah, critical fire danger as we get through the week. Believe it or not, this is day 56 in St. George of no measurable rainfall. Now, you may remember last year we had 155 days. We set the record, but we're staying high and dry as we head into tomorrow. We're going to talk about that fire threat and how long it holds on coming up in Utah's most accurate forecast.
All right, thanks a lot. Coming up, school is already a struggle in the area of COVID-19, but as students get ready to gear up for the fall, how can full-time working parents manage if their kids are only in school part-time?
And you can watch ABC4 News live anywhere you go. It's simple. Just go to abc4plus.com and download the app.
Time now for Utah's most accurate forecast with Alana Brophy, Weather Rate Certified 9 years in a row.
Welcome back on this Monday, starting with a very cool picture. Ryan Andreasen sent this our way. He took it from Antelope Island, looking over Mount Ogden, and he catches a comet. Comet Neowise, caught there on camera, really pretty. That was 4:30 this morning, and you can see those clear skies. They're still out there for a bulk of the state. The Four Corners camera showing Blanding, and you can see just a few cumulus clouds in the distance, but quieter there, down there in Blanding. Not the case in the Southwest Desert, where those winds are increasing. Plenty of heat as well. Gosh, I feel like this is 4th of July leftovers. We've got a lot of heat, above average, 92 in Logan, 95 in Ogden, 96 in Salt Lake, a degree hotter there in Provo, and 103 down there in St. George, where we are starting to see the winds picking up. 100 degree reading there in Saratoga Springs. Looking at the backside of the Wasatch, close to 90 degrees, 89 in Park City, 91 in Tooele, and a mix of 90s out there in Utah County. So it is hot, and when we have this heat, even late in the day, the UV index lets us know that we can still get a sunburn in about 15 to 30 minutes. That's what that orange risk is, and we know that that high risk is going to hold on, and it really goes up in the middle of the day, noon. You've got bad news there. Looking at the wind speeds, you can see we've started to see them picking up in places like Milford, Cedar City, Hanksville. These winds are very important because they really speak to fire danger, which is something we're going to be battling throughout the week with temperatures and winds picking up as well as the heat. We've got very dry conditions. The current drought monitor showing you that severe ranking throughout central Utah and on the eastern side of the state. We've got moderate drought in the north, so very dry fire fuels. We have to be extremely careful. Heading into tomorrow, that critical risk for central, southern, and eastern Utah exists, which is why we have a red flag warning going into effect at 9 a.m. Even outside of that critical risk, we have an elevated risk near Salt Lake, so that's something to keep in mind if you are going to be outdoors. Our satellite shows us with that high pressure building, we do have a weak dry cold front that will pass through tomorrow, and that's one of the reasons we're dealing with those gusty winds. Check out this flow around the Four Corners area. That's the monsoon flow. Now there is a chance we could see some isolated showers in and around Lake Powell tomorrow late in the day, but really most of Utah staying high and dry for the next little bit. Futurecast shows the clouds in the Uinta Basin and Castle Country as we get through tonight. They'll eventually clear. Here comes that front tomorrow through the day, and then you notice those red lines with those southerly winds prompting that red flag warning. It will be gusty. The front comes through, doesn't pack much of a punch. It will cool us, but I still think those numbers are going to get close to 90 degrees as we get into Wednesday. We still have very quiet conditions with a stationary front draped across us. That fire weather watch is something that has now turned into a red flag warning for Wednesday. So we have one tomorrow for the bulk of the state, and as we head into Wednesday, that threat shifts east just a little bit. St. George gets out of it, but a lot of southern Utah will stay in it, so fire danger is something that will be tough. 80s and 90s into tomorrow. That front jostles our numbers just a little bit. We still see those triple digits down south with the winds cranking 102 in Moab. Find your city and you're going to notice that pinpoint Futurecast showing us those numbers in the low 90s in Dugway and Duchesne. We get into central Utah with gustier conditions. A mix of 90s and triple digits pop back in Green River, Lake Powell, St. George, 103 again tomorrow. Whew! Sweating it out in July. Here's a look at the St. George 7-day where those triple digits hold on and the heat becomes the big talker. By the weekend, whoa, 108, 109, not kidding around there. Dangerous heat in the forecast for Washington County. We look at the Wasatch Front where we hang on to above average 90s, 98 on Friday, plenty of sunshine, breezy conditions over the next couple of days, and we know that that fire threat stays through the month of July. We have to be so careful out there. Now when you head out, don't forget to take Utah's most accurate forecast with you. Just grab your smart device and download the ABC4 Utah weather app.
You're watching ABC4 News.
Welcome back. Because of the COVID-19 threat, many schools are reducing the number of students in classrooms, but they have to do it with the same number of teachers.
That means some schools will need a rotating schedule, kids in classrooms part-time and then learning remotely from home part-time. So if kids are only in school part of the time, but parents need to work full-time, how exactly will that work? ABC's Becky Worley reports.
Across the nation, school districts are deciding what the classroom will look like this fall as parents struggle to hang on.
We can't keep up with this. Everybody is overwhelmed and everybody has their hands tied.
In a New York Times article titled, "In the COVID-19 Economy, You Can Have a Kid or a Job. You Can't Have Both," Deb Perlman, a New York City mom and author, says her school district is considering sending students back only part-time, physically attending school 1 out of every 3 weeks. But she says that does little to help parents desperate for normal routine.
There are people who have hit pause, like been able to hit the pause button on a project under the idea that September would return some level of normalcy in childcare and like not having your kids there all day, and now they can't, and they're really afraid they're gonna have to leave the workforce.
The American Academy of Pediatrics, who recently released guidelines for reopening schools, says they too want kids physically in class, pointing to its major health, social, and educational benefits.
We really need to be working very hard as a country to really drive down the number of coronavirus infections. And that's going to make the reopening of schools in the fall much, much easier.
But for back to school, there's no one-size-fits-all solution, since the virus looks different in different places.
This is a national conversation, but it has to be hyper-local decision-making, because this looks different in every community, and responsiveness is what's going to save lives this year. We cannot protect kids from all risk, but we're going to have to decide week by week or month by month, is it riskier to send kids to school and have everyone's health be in jeopardy, or is it riskier to keep kids home and have everyone's finances and ability to pay their bills be in jeopardy?
That was ABC's Becky Worley reporting. Here in Utah, schools will be back in session this fall. The state school board has issued recommendations and some requirements such as masks and hygiene protocols, but we don't know exactly what classes will look like just yet. That's because each school district is required to make their own plan. Those plans must be done by August 1st.
Houses can be rebuilt, but dogs can't be replaced.
A firefighter helped save a dog from a fire exactly 21 years after his own dog was rescued by a firefighter. A heartwarming holiday weekend story after the break.
You're watching ABC4 News.
This looks like a scene from the movie Backdraft, but it's actually helmet cam video from California firefighter Rob Lee showing an inferno that crews faced in southeast Fresno over the weekend. The fire, which was started by fireworks, tore through that home and trapped a dog named Samson inside. Now, because of Samson's weight and size, it was a team effort to pull him to safety.
What the video doesn't show is that 21 years prior, on July 4th, a then 6-year-old Rob Lee had his own dog Mackie rescued by the Fresno Fire Department. That heroic act gave Lee 8 more years with his childhood best friend and then inspired him to become a firefighter.
I was that child on the doorstep, and the firefighter was giving my dog to me.
Fresno firefighters pulled his dog from his childhood home. Again, that was just a couple years earlier on the 4th of July. That moment gave him more time and love with that animal and a future career path.
Yeah, after several years of fighting fires with the Forest Service and various other departments, Lee said he landed his dream job with the Fresno Fire Department. What are the odds of that? I mean,
that's crazy.
21 years to the day.
But amazing.
Yeah.
So happy both of those Puchos are okay. We've got fire danger down south, 103 with a red flag warning, 92 in Salt Lake tomorrow.
All right, thanks, Alana. Thank you for watching it. Remember, the news at 5 is coming up next.
Now at 5, a COVID-19 outbreak infecting more than 300 meat-packing plant employees. A look into why the Latino community in and around that plant is being hit hard.
Plus, a second round of stimulus checks potentially nearing. A live report explaining who is getting one and who is not. Good evening, everyone. I'm Emily Clark.
And I'm Glenn Mills. Thanks for being with us. We do begin with breaking news from the primary election tonight. The Associated Press is calling the Republican gubernatorial primary for Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox. That does come following the release of new numbers from 7 counties, including Salt Lake, Utah, Davis, and Weber, just this afternoon. Now, here's the latest numbers. Cox has a 9,134 vote lead over former Governor Jon Huntsman, Jr. Huntsman did call Cox today, we're told, to concede the race. Cox will move on to the general election to face Democratic candidate Chris Peterson. It's been 40 years since a Democrat was elected governor in Utah.
Momentum is building for a second round of stimulus checks for American families. Our own Nick McGurk looking into when this could happen and how much you would receive. He's live now from the state capitol. Nick?
Well, there seems to be consensus, Emily, that momentum is building, right? That we will likely get some form of checks in the mail, but nothing is guaranteed. Now, we had the CARES Act back in March. Those checks were $1,200. And last month, the Democrat-controlled U.S. House did pass the HEROES Act. That would even be more expansive than the CARES Act. But this all comes down to the Republican-controlled Senate. They convene in 2 weeks, and the ball is essentially in their court. But people in the Trump administration, including the president himself, have talked about sending checks to Americans. They say they are working on their own plan as well. So there's a lot going on. Nothing's guaranteed, but we want to lay out for you everything that we know as well. Again, the Democrat-controlled House passed the HEROES Act last month, and that would authorize another round of stimulus checks for most Americans. $1,200, not only for adults, but for children as well. Basically, there are a lot of questions about access to these checks, including to immigrants and dependents. So it's likely the Senate won't just pass the HEROES Act as is. On a broader note, though, Professor Tim Chambliss with the University of Utah says with national polls showing just 17% of Americans being optimistic about the future of our country, well, what he says, it is very likely something will pass before the November election.
If I had to guess, predicting the immediate future of the recent past, the answer is yes. Why? Because Congress is very good at doing 2 things. Nothing or reacting. Congress is reacting to the public opinion polls, reacting to the point that we're going to have a national election, a hiring and firing decision on November 3rd, and those who are holding office want to get reelected.
Chambliss says if you'll remember, those stimulus checks back in March had a very bold signature on them, President Donald Trump. But Chambliss says there's no doubt getting checks to Americans is very much a part of the political calculus with that very important November election coming up. So he thinks it'll happen, but right now it is anybody's guess if it will go to everybody, just folks who have been hit the hardest. We're going to be watching that Republican-controlled Senate in coming weeks. We're live at the state capitol. I'm Nick McGurk, ABC 4 News.
Okay, Nick, thank you. Today, the State Health Department reporting 517 new COVID-19 cases here in Utah. This, of course, following the holiday weekend. The Health Department also found 6 more people have died from the virus, 3 of them not hospitalized at the time of their deaths. But so far, 1,600 people have been hospitalized with 517 new cases today. That drives our total number of cases above 25,000.
Health officials are bracing for a possible post-4th of July spike in the next 2 weeks after many Utahns spent the weekend with friends and extended family members. Utah has averaged 544 new cases per day over the past week and is now 20th in the nation with 809 cases per 100,000 residents. That does put us ahead of states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and even Texas. The better news, though, is that we are 43rd in the U.S. in deaths per 100,000. That's because of our young and relatively healthy population, but experts do fear that statistic will go up if our hospitals become overwhelmed.
We're sort of on this teetering point where, you know, we've seen some really high days and then we've seen it come back down and then we've seen some high days, and are we on the edge? We're sort of on this edge of an outbreak, and you know, it's concerning. We want to sort of keep this low level of spread until we can get a vaccine or a treatment to keep people from overflowing hospital beds.
The health department says 192 COVID-19 patients are currently hospitalized in the state. The Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation projects that Utah's intensive care unit beds could be filled sometime this fall. More than 130,000 people have died of the coronavirus here in the United States, as states in the south and west see major surges in infections. Some hospitals warn they are reaching capacity, and health experts are especially concerned about videos on social media of large groups over the holiday weekend without following safety protocols. ABC's Rena Roy is in New York tonight with the latest.
New video out of Nashville shows partiers shoulder to shoulder without masks over the holiday weekend, as a billboard reminds people of the citywide face mask requirement. Local officials trying to tackle the staggering 15% daily rate of positivity.
The number of cases continue to rise in many parts of the country, so that's an ongoing concern.
Thousands also headed to beaches across the country to celebrate July 4th. In Diamond Lake, Michigan, hundreds partied without face coverings or social distancing. And some in Jacksonville, Florida, even protested the city's mask mandate. With a 26% positive infection rate, Miami-Dade now closing restaurants and gyms as officials urge young people to be vigilant.
The age that has the most cases in the state of Florida is age 21. Just because you're 21 and you may not have significant symptoms, that does not mean that you can't infect other people. And I think that that's something that we're obviously concerned about.
37 states are seeing an increase in cases. Arizona becoming the 8th to surpass 100,000 cases, with ICUs at 89% capacity. In Houston, Texas, one hospital reports the ICU capacity is at 98%.
We deserve PPE!
Nurses at another Houston facility protesting over a lack of protective gear and slim staffing.
We feel that we're working with an unsafe environment.
This as the country's former epicenter, New York City, makes progress in reopening. The governor warning people to avoid another surge.
New York City goes into phase 3 today. No indoor dining, but there are rules on phase 3, right? It doesn't mean go out and have a party.
Now, as some scientists across the globe urge the WHO to consider that the virus could be airborne, officials are hoping for an effective vaccine.
So we hope as we go along that by the end of this year or the beginning of 2021, we will at least have an answer whether the vaccine or vaccines, plural, are safe and effective.
And a new report from the New York Times based on CDC data highlights the racial disparity of COVID, saying Black and Latino Americans are 3 times as likely to become infected and nearly twice as likely to die from the virus compared to white Americans. The paper had to sue to get the data, which is an analysis of more than 500,000 cases. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
Utah's not left out from that New York Times report, as new cases in Cache County have been Latino employees at the meatpacking plant JBS in Hiram. There are 13 new cases today under the Bear River Health Department, which covers Cache, Rich, and Box Elder counties, bringing their total to 1,724. Now, we did speak to Lizette Villegas of Smithfield. She spearheaded peaceful protests for employees at JBS after that outbreak infected more than 300 employees. She's also working with local nonprofits to educate Latinos about COVID-19, as well as bringing food and supplies directly to people in need. She says the reason Latinos have been hit the hardest is because they do not have the luxury to work from home.
We don't have the opportunity to be able to build a house through Zoom, kill a cow through Zoom, or pick raspberries and tomatoes and potatoes through Zoom. We have to go out and work.
Now, she says employees at JBS are still struggling but need to continue working to feed their families. She's asking for diaper, food, and monetary donations to continue to help the Latinos affected by the pandemic in Cache County. If you want more information to help, you can go to our website, abc4.com. Now to an outbreak at the Purgatory Correctional Facility in southern Utah, where 96 inmates and 9 staff have tested positive for COVID-19. ABC4's Katie Corrales brings us the latest.
Now, the Washington County Sheriff's Office confirms there are only 2 housing units remaining in the correctional facility with inmates who have not yet been tested, and they are starting their first rounds of retesting this week.
This week is actually
a big step. The negative quarantines that were there just as a precaution. As long as they don't test positive today, if they give us a second negative, then they'll be cleared from quarantine. And the ones that gave us the original positives, they'll be moved to a negative quarantine if they test negative this week.
Chief Deputy Jake Schultz says that means more than 100 inmates who may have been exposed but initially tested negative could be moved out of quarantine. The positive inmates are being held in 3 housing units. Only 4 individuals are considered high risk, including 1 inmate who was hospitalized last weekend with trouble breathing. Jail officials say he was released within a few hours.
Well, most of them still haven't shown any symptoms, and the ones that have, they've been mild.
The sheriff's office confirms 7 guards and 2 transport officers have also tested positive.
We're working through it. We're managing it.
Chief Deputy Schultz confirms that each inmate is given a mask when booked into the facility, and jail staff are exchanging the masks twice each week. In Hurricane, Katie Crowless, ABC4 News.
Okay, now time to talk about our weather, and it is just so darn hot out there.
It is. Chief Meteorologist Alana Brophy tracking all the details for us today. Hey, Alana.
Hi, guys. The heat was building, and boy, are we feeling it. Upper 90s along the Wasatch Front, triple digits down south. We take a look at Utah State. This Cache Valley camera showing some hazy sunshine out there, unfiltered sunshine, hard to find a cloud. And of course, when that happens, you know you're dealing with a UV index. It's sliding because we're getting late into the day, but you can still get a sunburn in the moderate category. It takes about half hour to 45 minutes directly in the sun. So if you're going out to grill, something you have to be aware of. Also in the moderate category, the particulate matter in Tooele County this hour. It's paired with ozone, which is one of the reasons that we're dealing with that moderate, but PMs there are higher as we look at the definitely high in Weber County and unhealthy for sensitive groups in Salt Lake and portions of Weber and Davis County. We know that air quality is rough, and it's because of ozone at this hour. When we get the heat and unfiltered sunshine, green and clean down there in southern Utah, we get that chemical reaction. So the heat of the day often spikes those ozone levels, which is what we're seeing. Speaking of heat of the day, backside of the Wasatch in the upper 80s. Look at Park City at 88, 95 in Heber, just shy of 100 degrees in Saratoga Springs, 96 over in South Jordan, Ogden, same number. We know it's hot out there, and as we get through the next couple of hours, we're going to see those numbers in the north dropping into the 80s with pretty clear skies. Those triple digits holding on at this hour down south also. The area that we're seeing increasing winds as we get through tonight, we've got an elevated fire risk for Color Country and the Southwest Desert. This will turn into a red flag warning tomorrow morning for who it will impact and how long it will hold on. That coming up in my full forecast. Guys, over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Alana. A dry, hot week is ahead. Haley Hendricks has a warning from fire officials on how to protect your home.
The Traverse Mountain Fire burned about 500 acres of land. It's now out, but the burn scar remains to show us just how close it came to some of these homes. And now fire officials explain to us the importance of defendable space.
We're getting fires burning right up into people's yards, and that's concerning.
As a homeowner or just someone that lives here in Utah, it's really crucial that you're doing your part and you're prepping your property.
High winds and dry vegetation create very active fire behavior, as it did with the Traverse Mountain Fire. The wildfire threatened homes in the area, and Matthew McFarland with Unified Fire Authority and Kate Webb with the Department of Natural Resources say homeowners should keep defensible space around their property.
You want 30 feet clear of any kind of fuels. Ideally, that means oak, brushes, anything that's flammable.
It could be as simple as clearing out your gutters. It could be as simple as trimming up the limbs on the trees, removing flammable vegetation or material away from the side of your house.
When a wildfire burns, Webb and McFarland say embers are most dangerous to homes in the area.
It's not a flaming front moving in, and those embers can blow up to a mile away from the fire. So it's important to think about where could an ember land on my property that might ignite a wildfire.
If you have shake shingles, which are really pretty and popular, they're one of the highest risk building techniques. Shake shingles are known for starting home fires when embers are flying in the air.
Reporting in Utah County, Haley Hendricks, ABC4 News.
Still ahead, the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein continues even after his death, with the latest arrest of his girlfriend. New details expected to emerge.
Plus, the tweet from President Trump about NASCAR's Bubba Wallace that has some accusing him of inflaming racial tensions.
You're watching ABC4 News.
Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend remains behind bars tonight.
She's accused of helping Epstein recruit and abuse underage girls. ABC's Alex Prisha has more on her case from Washington.
Today, Ghislaine Maxwell arrived at a Brooklyn prison, transferred from New Hampshire, where she was arrested last week as the alleged co-conspirator of accused sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, her now deceased former boyfriend.
Maxwell was among Epstein's closest associates and helped him exploit girls who were as young as 14 years old.
The 58-year-old British socialite is charged with facilitating Epstein's alleged sex crimes by helping him recruit, groom, and ultimately abuse 3 unnamed teenage victims between 1994 and 1997.
Ghislaine Maxwell would go out on these drives to procure models. She would say, "These are the new Biles."
Just hours after her arrest, she appeared in a court remotely, alone. ABC News has learned that she was wearing an orange jumpsuit and seemed agitated. Maxwell's case is also raising new questions in the UK about her relationship with British royal Prince Andrew. This newly surfaced photo from 2002 shows Maxwell sitting on Queen Elizabeth's throne at Buckingham Palace, next to actor Kevin Spacey. Virginia Roberts-Giuffre is an alleged victim of Epstein and Maxwell. She alleges in court filings that Maxwell recruited and groomed her at age 16 to be Epstein's sex slave, and claims Epstein and Maxwell directed her to have sex with some of his friends, allegedly including Prince Andrew on 3 occasions, twice when she was 17. The prince denies the allegations, and despite the photo of them together, he says he has no recollection of ever meeting her. Maxwell's also long denied any involvement in Epstein's alleged sexual abuse of young girls. Giuffre responded to Maxwell's arrest on 60 Minutes Australia.
Prince Andrew should be panicking at the moment because Ghislaine doesn't really care about anyone else but Ghislaine.
We would welcome Prince Andrew coming in to talk with us.
The federal prosecutor handling the case reiterating that he would like to hear from the prince. But a source close to the prince says his team has reached out twice in the past month to the DOJ, but got no reply. Prince Andrew is not facing any charges. Now, Maxwell's attorneys could seek bail later this week, something the DOJ would likely oppose. They've already characterized her as an extreme flight risk. Alex Perche, ABC News, Washington.
A tweet from President Donald Trump today about NASCAR's Bubba Wallace inflaming racial tensions. Trump wrote, quote, "Has Bubba Wallace apologized to all of those great NASCAR drivers and officials who came to his aid, stood by his side, and were willing to sacrifice everything for him, only to find out that the whole thing was just another hoax, that flag decision has caused lowest ratings ever," end quote. That, of course, the tweet there. Last month, NASCAR officials released a photo of a noose found hanging in Wallace's garage, who is black, but an FBI investigation determined that noose had been hanging in that stall since October of last year.
The Supreme Court today issuing a unanimous ruling in an important case regarding the Electoral College. The court ruled it is legal for states to punish Electoral College members who fail to fulfill a pledge to vote for a state's popular vote winner in presidential elections. The ruling said in part that states can tell electors, quote, they have no ground for reversing the vote of millions of its citizens. That direction accords with the Constitution as well as with the trust of a nation that here we the people rule, end quote. 10 of the nation's 538 presidential electors went rogue back in 2016, attempting to vote for someone other than their pledged candidate.
A rapidly spreading wildfire forcing evacuations and road closures in California. Crews were busy battling the flames last night, including water drops from the air. As of this morning, the Soledad fire north of LA had consumed 1,100 acres with containment at 0%. The Red Cross did set up a parking lot as a temporary shelter site, with evacuees required to stay in their vehicles due to coronavirus-related restrictions. Authorities also issued a smoke advisory last night through this afternoon.
Time now for Utah's most accurate forecast. Weather Rate certified 9 years in a row.
Fire danger, a real concern here in Utah as well.
Yep, Chief Meteorologist Alana Brophy tracking on that for us today. Hey, Alana.
Hi, guys. Yeah, that's going to hold on for the next several days, and the wind is a big player in that. We look at our time-lapse video from our Colonial Flag Tower camera, and you can see in the afternoon hours the wind started to pick up. Breezy conditions in the north, but we're going to get downright gusty down south for tomorrow, and it's going to hold on as we get through the next couple of days, and that will be an issue and brings those red flag warnings. Park City Mountain, gorgeous shot there. We're seeing clear skies, really hard to find that that cloud cover today, unfiltered sunshine, heating things up with temperatures way above average. Let's talk wind gusts real quick. You can see the areas already dealing with big numbers. That includes Hanksville, Moab, Cedar City, Delta, Milford. That's the area where we will be seeing a red flag warning going into effect at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Here's another big issue. It's relative humidity. We've got dry fire fuels, and as you look at these numbers, we've got a lot of single digits and teens. It's expressed in a percent, and it means very dry conditions. Usually we rebound overnight. Tonight we won't. That's another reason that red flag warning is going into effect. Our current temperatures in the 90s along the Wasatch Front, 97 in Provo, 102 in Green River, 104 in St. George, and a lot of 90s, high 90s out there. That critical fire risk will hold on for a bulk of the state, including central, southern, and eastern Utah as we head into tomorrow with gusty conditions. Right now we have a little cloud cover in the Uinta Basin over Castle Country and down in Grand County. Not much of it, but it will hang around as we get through the next couple of hours. We have some showers around the Four Corners high. That would maybe bring an isolated storm to Lake Powell, but other than that, high and dry as we head into the next 7 days, truthfully, in the Beehive State. Futurecast shows us those clouds I mentioned. We start to see those move just a little bit. As we get through tomorrow, we get a weak, dry, cold front coming through. It's not going to do too much. It will jostle our temperatures a little bit, and you see how those winds really pick up to the south. It starts to move behind it a little cooler, but we're going to maintain those 90s. Maybe Wednesday, high 80s, but really looks like we're going to stay pretty hot, and this will just drop us down from the extreme above average heat we're dealing with. Let's talk red flag warning. I told you 9 a.m. Look at all the areas impacted all the way up to the Uinta Basin. This stays in effect until midnight. Then the threat shifts east just a little bit. This is for Wednesday, just posted this afternoon, so we know a bulk of south central Utah will be part of this, as well as Moab and all the way down to the Four Corners. Fire danger is real. We are into July. This is the criteria for those. We know we've got those hot temperatures, dry conditions, and that low relative humidity is going to be rough. 80s and 90s into tomorrow. Notice that clear skies, triple digits return down south. Speaking of, here's that St. George 7-day where the big talker is the heat. We are cooking over the weekend. Dangerous heat there with clear skies, windy conditions. That's going to be a breeze up north where the numbers will jostle just a little bit Tuesday and Wednesday. We climb up to the upper 90s by Friday. We get a little cloud cover by the end of the weekend and into our next work week, but a very quiet pattern that is pretty hot. 92 for tomorrow. We'll be right back.
It's time to embrace your inner Colonel Sanders. That's because Monday is National Fried Chicken Day.
The longtime favorite meal came to the U.S. from Scotland, whose immigrants would deep fry chicken in fat. Shortly after being introduced to the southern part of the states, fried chicken has become a beloved staple. So there you go.
I'm a drumstick girl. 92 tomorrow, 103 in St. George. Red flag warning going into effect with gusty winds, and the heat holds on.
See you at 6.
Live from Utah's first TV station, ABC4 News at 6 starts now.
Good evening, I'm Emily Clark.
And I'm Glenn Mills. Thanks so much for joining us tonight from your local election headquarters. The Associated Press calling the Republican gubernatorial primary for Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox tonight. That does come following the release of new numbers from 7 counties. That includes Salt Lake, Weber, Davis, and Utah County as well. So here's a look at the latest numbers. Cox has a 9,134 vote lead over former Governor Jon Huntsman. Huntsman did call Cox to concede the race as well. He also issued a statement today. Cox will now move on to the general election to face Democratic candidate Chris Peterson. It's been 40 years since a Democrat was elected governor in Utah.
Now to the very latest on the coronavirus in Utah. The state health department reporting 517 new cases here in our state following the holiday weekend. The health department also found 6 more people died from COVID-19. 3 of them were not hospitalized at the time of their deaths. But so far, 1,600 people have been hospitalized. With those additional cases today, though, that does drive our total number of cases above 25,000. There are 13 new cases of COVID-19 today under the Bear River Health Department, which covers Cache, Rich, and Box Elder counties. That brings their total to 1,724. More than 1,500 of those are from Cache County. The majority have been Latinos and employees at the meatpacking plant, JBS in Hiram. ABC4's Jordan Verdadero has been keeping up with the recent spike in Cache County and tells us how Latinos, especially